We all carry a wound that goes deeper than words, and that wound is Chiron. Chiron isn't just an asteroid, it's the sacred scar, the wound you didn't ask for, the pain you didn't choose, but the one your soul agreed to carry because of the healing it would eventually unlock. Every Chiron sign shows how you've been programmed to feel not enough. It's the part of you that gets poked over and over again, whether through rejection, betrayal, shame, or failure. That is, until you finally learn to stop abandoning yourself. In this video, we're going sign by sign to uncover the wound you were programmed to carry, the hidden ways it plays out in your life, and the story your soul is asking you to rewrite. Because when you finally stop seeing your Chiron wound as a curse and start honoring it as an initiation, you don't just heal, you alchemize. So grab your birth chart, find the sign your Chiron sits in, and let's dive in.
Chiron in Aries is the lifelong ache of questioning your right to take up space, lead, or act on your desires, and the liberation that comes when you claim your existence without needing anyone's permission. Chiron in Aries carries the imprint of a core identity wound, one that makes you doubt the legitimacy of your own I am. At the surface, this can look like a fear of being too much, too loud, too demanding, or even too visible. But deeper, it's the wound of existence itself, the feeling that you must constantly prove you deserve to be here. This often begins early. You may have grown up in an environment where your needs or opinions were dismissed, overruled, or met with criticism. In some cases, your early attempts at independence were met with resistance or punishment, teaching you that asserting yourself was unsafe. You might have had to step into self-reliance too early, creating the belief that no one would protect you but you. For others, a dominating presence in the family dynamic may have unconsciously communicated, your role is to follow, not lead. The result is a lifelong push-pull between wanting to be bold, direct, and unapologetic, and fearing the fallout if you actually do. Over time, this can lead to overcompensating with aggression or undercompensating by fading into the background. Either way, it creates a constant inner question. Is who I am enough to matter? Beneath the visible struggle to assert yourself is a more delicate pain. The fear that if you stand fully in your identity, you'll be rejected, abandoned, or even attacked for it. This can play out in subtle but powerful ways. One being chasing validation through action, overworking, overachieving, or constantly making things happen to prove your worth. Another is avoiding leadership opportunities, saying no to stepping into the spotlight because the vulnerability feels dangerous. The lone wolf armor is another. Convincing yourself you don't need support or closeness, when deep down you're longing for someone to stand beside you. Also, trigger sensitivity. Feeling unusually reactive to criticism or being ignored because it scratches at that old fear of invisibility. As well as identity shape-shifting. Adjusting your personality or goals depending on who you're around to avoid conflict or disapproval. At its deepest, this is the wound of self-sovereignty, the uncertainty of whether you're allowed to fully exist on your own terms. So you may feel this energy in a few ways. One being exhaustion from constant proving, living life as a never-ending resume of your worthiness. Isolation by design, pushing people away so they can't challenge your independence. Anger as a shield is another, using irritation or bluntness to mask the vulnerability of wanting acceptance. As well as fear of slowing down, worrying that if you rest, you'll become irrelevant or forgotten. The healing comes when you realize that no one else gets to grant or revoke your right to exist as you are. Chiron in Aries holds the medicine of self-initiation, the ability to start, lead, and act without external permission. When healed, you embody unapologetic authenticity. You stop explaining or defending your choices, and your presence alone becomes a quiet declaration. I belong here. Your gift is empowering others to step into their own agency. You model what it looks like to live without waiting for consensus, to take the first step simply because your soul says, "This is mine to do." To heal and rewrite the story of your Chiron and Aries energy, the first step is to drop the proving cycle. Notice when your actions are fueled by the fear of being overlooked, and pause before you push forward. Next is to claim your space, physically and energetically, whether it's speaking up in a meeting, posting your truth online, or walking into a room with your head high. Next is to practice initiating without overthinking. Send the email, start the project, ask for what you want without justifying it. Next is to release the lone wolf myth. Let yourself receive help without seeing it as weakness. Support is not a threat to your autonomy. Next is to stop rehearsing your worth. You don't need a perfectly crafted identity to be valid. Show up messy, in progress, and still worthy. Next is to set boundaries with your own urgency. You are allowed to rest without losing your relevance. And finally, give your younger self the mic. Imagine the child version of you saying exactly what they want, and honor it without editing. When you begin living as though your existence is already justified, your energy shifts from defensiveness to creative power. And that's when your leadership, becomes undeniable. You help others break the spell of waiting for permission. Your presence whispers, you don't need anyone's approval to be exactly who you are. And in doing so, you awaken courage in people who've been hiding their own fire. A great affirmation for your Chiron and Aries energy is, I am enough simply by existing. My presence is my permission. Be sure to drop your wow, this is me moment in the comments. I read them all. And of course, give this video some love, share it with your soul tribe, and subscribe for more magic. And this is just the surface. Let's go all the way in. Details for my digital journals, audio guidance, courses, and private sessions are linked below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Taurus is the lifelong ache of questioning your value, safety, and right to receive, and the liberation that comes when you stop chasing stability outside yourself and start anchoring it within. Chiron in Taurus carries the imprint of a deep self-worth wound, one that convinces you your value is conditional, transactional, or tied to what you can produce, provide, or maintain. On the surface, it can look like struggles with money, stability, or self-esteem. But beneath it is the wound of intrinsic worth, the belief that your right to abundance and comfort must be earned, proven, or fought for. This often starts early. You may have grown up in a household where resources were scarce or unstable, creating an unconscious link between love and survival. In some cases, you were compared to others' success or beauty, teaching you that your value was always being measured against someone else's. Perhaps your desires for nice things, physical comfort, or creative pleasure were dismissed as unnecessary, making you feel guilty for wanting more. For others, there may have been material security, but emotional neglect, leaving you with the strange ache of having enough, but feeling empty. This wound often pushes you toward overcompensation, hustling endlessly to deserve rest, seeking external validation for your talents, or holding on to relationships, jobs, and possessions out of fear you won't find better. It creates a cycle where security is always just out of reach, no matter how much you accumulate. Underneath the visible struggles of self-worth and stability lies an even more tender truth. The fear that if everything you do or have was stripped away, there would be nothing left that makes you valuable. This wound often hides in plain sight, such as attachment to the tangible, holding tightly to people, possessions, and routines as anchors against uncertainty. Fear of receiving too much, subconsciously sabotaging opportunities, money, or love because deep down you doubt you've earned it. Shame around desire, believing that wanting more, whether it's beauty, wealth, pleasure, or ease, is greedy or indulgent. Or defensive independence, refusing help or gifts because it feels unsafe to owe anyone, as well as body-based insecurity, disconnection from your physical body or discomfort with sensuality, as if embodiment itself is a threat to your worth. At its deepest, this wound is about belonging to yourself, the right to inhabit your body, own your desires, and claim your value without needing an external stamp of approval. You may feel this energy in a few ways. One, as invisible resentment, feeling unappreciated when others benefit from your loyalty or hard work without reciprocation. Hypervigilance over money, constantly watching your bank account or fearing financial loss, even when stable. Undervaluing your talents, charging less than you deserve, or downplaying your gifts so you won't be judged. As well as overgiving in relationships, providing comfort and stability for others while quietly running on empty yourself. Your healing doesn't come from finally having enough. It comes from realizing you are enough, regardless of what you own or produce. Chiron in Taurus holds the medicine of embodied worthiness, the ability to feel safe, grounded, and whole simply because you exist. When healed, you become a living example of abundance that isn't rooted in excess, but in enoughness. You remind others that true security is an internal state, not an external guarantee. Your gift is to help others reconnect with their own value and pleasure, to show that stability can be soulful, sensual, and self-defined. To rewrite the story of your Chiron and Taurus energy, the first step is to separate worth from productivity. Your value was never meant to be measured by your output, your efficiency, or your ability to earn your keep. When you stop treating rest as a luxury and pleasure as a reward, you start living like your worth is an unshakable truth, not something you have to constantly prove. Next is to allow yourself to receive without repayment. Let generosity land without immediately calculating how to even the score. Practice simply saying thank you when someone offers help, a gift, or kindness. Receiving without repayment is not taking advantage. It's trusting that love and care can flow without conditions. Next is to redefine abundance. Instead of making security about bank balances or possessions, make it about the way your life feels. Abundance is the soft hum of ease in your body, the feeling of being at home in your space, the ability to breathe deeply because you know you're supported, inside and out. Next is to create beauty for yourself first. You don't have to earn flowers on your table, a slow morning with your favorite music, or a candlelit bath. Beauty and pleasure aren't treats. They're to be rationed. They are fuel for your spirit. Give yourself permission to be surrounded by things that make you feel alive, even if no one else will ever see them. Next is to speak your value out loud. No more whispering your worth or softening your boundaries to avoid discomfort. State your rates, your needs, and your limits clearly, without apology or over-explanation. Every time you voice your value, you anchor it more deeply into your reality. Next is to release scarcity programming. When fear tells you to hoard, to cling, or to withhold, experiment with small acts of generosity that feel safe. Share what you have, whether it's time, knowledge, resources, or love, in ways that remind you that giving doesn't diminish you, it expands you. And finally, treat your body like sacred property. This is the one home you will inhabit for your entire lifetime. Nourish it like it's irreplaceable. Rest it when it's tired. Adorn it in ways that make you feel most yourself. Listen to its signals like they are sacred instructions. Your body is not just a vessel for doing. It's a temple for being. You teach others that their value is not in how much they earn, give, or prove. It's in their very being. You help them slow down, receive without guilt, and anchor into the kind of safety that can't be stolen. A great affirmation for your Chiron and Taurus energy is, I am valuable, whole, and safe exactly as I am. My worth is not up for negotiation. Okay, your turn. Be sure to chat with me in the comments and let me know what resonated with you. And of course, be sure to hit like, send this to your friends, and subscribe so you never miss your cosmic upgrade. And don't just stop at this video. Come work with me. Whether it's a digital journal, an audio drop, or a private session, I've got you covered. All the links are in the description box below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Gemini is the lifelong ache of wondering if you're smart enough, articulate enough, or interesting enough to be taken seriously, and the quiet revolution that begins when you stop performing for approval and start trusting your unfiltered mind. Chiron in Gemini is often described as a wound in communication, learning, or self-expression. But the roots go deeper than just struggling to speak up. It's about the terms under which you learned to measure your intelligence. Early on, you may have been praised for certain skills, while quietly criticized or overlooked in others, creating an uneven mental self-image. This caused you to receive the message, directly or indirectly, that the way you think, learn, or speak was less than. Gemini energy is naturally multifaceted. It wants to explore, sample, and express without constraint. So when your learning style or thought process didn't match the mainstream approved model, it didn't just bruise your confidence, it fractured your sense of identity. For some, this began in school, where subjects were ranked and graded in a way that split your self-worth into strengths and failures. Maybe you excelled in writing or storytelling, but stumbled in math or science. And instead of being celebrated for what you were brilliant at, you were made to feel incomplete for not mastering the rest. For others, it came from being around people who seemed sharper, faster, or more knowledgeable in ways you couldn't match. So you started scanning yourself for deficits and finding them everywhere. This is why so many with displacement remember feeling anxious during test, hyper aware of how their voice sounded in class, or rehearsing sentences in their head before speaking, because they learned early that their mind was always being graded, even outside the classroom. This wound isn't just about grades or public speaking. It's about how you begin measuring your value against the imagined rubric of others. You learned to overcompensate in conversations with people you deemed smarter, dropping references, over-preparing, or monitoring your speech for mistakes. You learn to compare your background, education, or vocabulary against others, always noting where you came up short. You learn to hide or downplay your ideas until they were perfect, which often meant never sharing them at all. The real pain here isn't simply the fear of being misunderstood. It's the exhausting belief that you must constantly earn the right to be in the room, that your thoughts are on probation, waiting to be proven worthy of attention. And because Gemini energy is naturally curious, restless, and expressive, the suppression of your voice creates a particular kind of soul suffocation. You might have entire mental worlds that never make it past your lips because you've convinced yourself they won't measure up. And that's the quiet heartbreak of Chiron and Gemini. It can make you an observer in your own life. Instead of fully participating, you watch, listen, and analyze, gathering every piece of evidence to either prove or disprove your right to take up mental space. When this wound runs deep, it can bleed into unexpected areas, such as social masking, making yourself entertaining, agreeable, or easy to talk to, so no one sees the insecurity underneath. Also, hyper-awareness of perceived gaps, noticing almost compulsively when someone uses a word you don't know or references a concept you can't place. You may also use selective silence, withdrawing from certain conversations or industries entirely because you can't stomach feeling less than in that arena. Or even self-sabotage through comparison, hesitating to launch projects, share content, or step into visibility because you can already name 10 people you think could do it better or are already doing it. This isn't just a wound about speaking. It's about believing your mind is worth trusting in public. Ironically, Chiron in Gemini often pushes you toward your voice anyway, just not in the way the world originally expected. You might find yourself in fields or platforms that allow your mind to shine in your own format rather than by the school or corporate playbook. You begin to see that intelligence isn't one size fits all, that your ability to distill ideas, ask the right questions, or translate the complex into something human is a genius in itself. The same wound that once made you second-guess yourself becomes the reason you can teach, write, speak, or create in a way that actually reaches people. Because you know what it's like to feel small in the room, you craft your message so no one else has to. And the twist is, many Chiron and Gemini people find themselves thriving in spaces that actually do require mental agility, critical thinking, and even math or logic, but on their own terms. Like using numbers in astrology instead of calculus, or structuring arguments in storytelling instead of debating in a courtroom. The very subjects or formats that once felt like prisons become tools in your freedom work. The first step to rewriting the story of your Chiron and Gemini placement is first, shift from "am I smart enough" to "is this my format?" Stop assuming your worth depends on fitting into someone else's style of intelligence. Find the medium where your mind feels alive. Next is to practice speaking before you're ready. Post the half-formed thought. Ask the question you think is too basic. Say the thing before it's perfectly worded. You'll see your mind holds more power than you think. Next is to surround yourself with expanders, not judges. Share your voice in spaces where curiosity is valued over performance. Next is to catch the mental measuring tape. When you start scanning for where you're less than, stop and name 3 ways your perspective adds value as it is. Next is to stop curating yourself to fit the room. If you find yourself switching vocabulary, tone, or personality to match the smartest person present, pause. Let your natural rhythm lead. This teaches your nervous system that you can be safe and respected without shape-shifting. And finally, redefine intelligence in your world. Make a private list of the qualities you admire most in others, and notice how many of them you already embody. This reframes the lens you've been using to measure yourself. You teach people that their voice matters before it's polished. You model intellectual bravery, the kind that doesn't require a perfect GPA, Ivy League degree, or encyclopedic vocabulary to contribute something meaningful. In a world obsessed with credentials, you are the proof that truth and connection outrank perfection and status. You give others permission to share the thing that they were afraid was too small or not good enough. And in doing so, you show them it's already enough. A great affirmation for your Chiron and Gemini placement is, "My voice matters in the form it comes through. My ideas are not on probation. They are my gift." Let's make this a chart therapy session and share your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, tap that like button, share the vibes with your friends, and subscribe so the stars always find you. And your next breakthrough is just one click away. My digital journals, audio guidance, courses, and private sessions are linked below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Cancer is the lifelong ache of wondering if you'll ever truly be nurtured, chosen, or emotionally secure. and the quiet liberation that comes when you stop waiting for someone else to grant you belonging. Chiron in Cancer is often framed as a wound around home, family, or emotional safety. But the surface interpretation barely scratches the truth. At its core, this is the ache of emotional proof, the belief that you must earn care, safety, and acceptance before you're allowed to feel secure. This wound often forms in the earliest layers of your life. You may have grown up in a home where the emotional weather was unpredictable, where love and attention were given generously one moment, then withheld the next. Sometimes the people who raised you provided for your physical needs, but struggled to meet your emotional ones, leaving you to quietly raise yourself on a soul level. In other cases, you were placed in the role of the emotional anchor for your family, a child who soothed adult tensions, smoothed over conflict, or made yourself small so no one else would feel uncomfortable. Even if your family looked normal on the outside, you may have been taught that stability could be snatched away without warning, that somewhere, somehow, your belonging was conditional, and if you didn't play the part or manage the feelings of others, you could lose it. This wound doesn't just stay in childhood. It moves into your adult relationships, work environments, and even the way you parent yourself. It shows up in ways that aren't immediately obvious, such as overgiving as an unspoken bargain. So you pour yourself into caretaking, cooking, cleaning, or anticipating needs, not only from love, but from the hope that your presence will become indispensable enough to guarantee no one leaves. Or staying too long in safe but stagnant situations, choosing the familiar pain of a lukewarm relationship, a draining friendship, or a job you've outgrown over the uncertainty of the unknown. Another is reading every micro-expression, scanning the energy in a room for signs of tension or withdrawal, as if you can head off abandonment by catching it early. Another is smiling through the ache, presenting warmth and openness while keeping the most tender parts of yourself locked away, because real vulnerability feels like giving someone the map to hurt you. One of the most heartbreaking parts of this wound is the phantom home you carry inside, the longing for a place where you feel completely safe, loved, and seen without condition. It's not even about going back to something you had. It's about yearning for a sense of home your soul remembers, but your human self never truly experienced. This can make you chase nostalgia, cling to people who feel like home even when they're harmful, or endlessly redecorate your physical space in search of an inner peace that keeps slipping away. This placement can bring a few different dynamics. One is self-abandonment in the name of peace, sacrificing your own needs so others never have to feel discomfort. Another is hypervigilance disguised as love, constantly checking in, over-explaining, or overprotecting as a way to soothe your own anxiety. Also, clinging to the role of the strong one, feeling safest when you're the caretaker, even when you're secretly desperate for someone to care for you. Also, choosing the familiar ache, staying in dynamics that hurt, because at least you know the shape of the pain. The beauty of Chiron and Cancer is that your healing doesn't come from finally finding the right person to keep you safe. It comes from realizing you are the safe place you've been searching for. This placement refines your ability to mother yourself in ways no one else could. It makes you the architect of your own emotional sanctuary, one that doesn't depend on external permission or stability. Your gift is profound emotional intuition. You don't just sense how others feel. You know what their inner child needs to hear. You create spaces, both physical and emotional, where people's nervous systems can relax and where vulnerability feels safe. And while your wound began with instability, your healing often blooms in the homes, families, and communities you choose and create for yourself. Healing this placement isn't just about telling yourself you're safe. It's about rewiring every instinct that's been trained to put safety outside of you. The first step to achieving this is to stop waiting for emotional permission. You don't have to prove your worth before being allowed to belong. Choose yourself before you wait to be chosen. Next is to create home inside your body. Practice rituals that tell your nervous system, I am safe now. Hand over heart breaths, weighted blankets, baths, cooking comfort foods for yourself. Make you the place you come home to. Next is to choose relationships that feel like rest. If you have to constantly perform, monitor, or overgive, that's not love. That's survival mode disguised as connection. Next is to relearn how to receive without earning. When someone offers you care, don't rush to even it out. Let yourself be poured into. This retrains your nervous system to feel safe without transaction. Next is to redefine family on your own terms. Chosen family, soul family, spiritual community. Your belonging doesn't have to come from blood ties. Next is to release the nostalgia trap. Stop trying to recreate a home from the past that never truly existed. Your sanctuary is not something you go back to. It's something you build forward. And finally, anchor safety in the present. Use grounding practices to remind yourself that past instability isn't your current reality. Speak affirmations aloud daily until your body starts to believe them. You are the living embodiment of unconditional care. People exhale around you. You remind them, through your presence, words, and energy, that they don't have to earn love, that their needs aren't a burden, and that belonging is a right, not a privilege. A great affirmation for your Chiron and Cancer placement is, I am my own safe place. My worth is not conditional. I belong exactly as I am. Be sure to let me know what part hit home for you in the comments below. And of course, be sure to hit like, send this to your besties, and subscribe so you never miss your cosmic upgrade. And don't just stop at this video. Come work with me, whether it's a digital journal, an audio drop, or a private session. I've got you covered. All the links are in the description box below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for being here. Chiron in Leo is the lifelong ache of wondering if you're truly special enough to be seen, celebrated, and chosen, and the liberation that comes when you stop performing for approval and start radiating from your core. Chiron in Leo carries the soul memory of having your light dimmed, ignored, or overshadowed in formative years. At its surface, it can look like a fear of not being special or unique enough to be valued. But deeper than that, it's the wound of performative worth. Believing your right to love and belonging is tied to how well you can entertain, impress, or stand out. This wound often begins early. You may have been the child who had to earn praise through achievements, charm, humor, or talent. For some, attempts to shine were met with criticism, comparison, or dismissal, making you question whether it was safer to play small. In other cases, you were celebrated only when you fit a certain image or played a certain role. The good child, the star student, the funny one, leaving you unsure if the real you would be accepted without the performance. It creates an internal tug of war, the longing to be fully seen and the fear that if you step forward without a mask, the audience will disappear. Beneath the obvious desire for recognition lies something even more tender, the belief that if you're not inspiring awe, you're invisible. This placement can quietly shape your life in a few different ways. One is competing with ghost, comparing yourself to people who seem more magnetic, creative, or naturally gifted, even if they're only in your imagination. Another is chasing applause instead of connection, prioritizing admiration over intimacy because admiration feels safer than vulnerability. Exaggerated highs and lows is another, feeling euphoric when you're praised and gutted when you're overlooked, as if each moment confirms or denies your entire worth. Another is fear of being ordinary, avoiding settings where you might blend in because you're afraid that without your specialness, you have nothing to offer. Or even withdrawing your gifts entirely. In some cases, the pain of not being recognized leads you to hide your talents altogether, convincing yourself you're just not that creative, when really you're protecting your heart from rejection. At its deepest, this wound is about the conditional spotlight, the sense that love, praise, and belonging come only when you're at your most dazzling and disappear when you're quiet, messy, or simply human. It can leave you feeling like you're constantly auditioning for a role in other people's lives. This energy can show up in a few different ways. One is overcompensating with charisma, turning every gathering into a stage, even when you're tired, because you don't want anyone to think you're boring. Another are pride walls, acting self-assured while secretly craving reassurance that you're enough. Self-betrayal for applause is another. Agreeing to roles, jobs, or relationships that look glamorous on the outside but feel hollow on the inside. Also, creative paralysis. Procrastinating on passion projects out of fear they won't be brilliant enough. Your healing doesn't come from finally proving your brilliance. It comes from knowing you were never required to. Chiron in Leo carries the medicine of authentic radiance. Once you stop performing for approval, you realize your light doesn't have to be earned or maintained. It's simply who you are. And that light doesn't dim when someone else shines. It expands the whole room. Your gift is the ability to draw out the brilliance in others. You don't just inspire people. You liberate them from their own fear of being seen. You understand the courage it takes to stand unapologetically in one's truth, and you model that courage for others. To rewrite the story of your Chiron in Leo placement, the first step is to stop performing for worth. Notice when you're slipping into entertainment mode just to hold attention. Let people see you in your quieter, unfiltered moments. Next is to detach from the scoreboard. Praise and recognition are beautiful, but they are not the measure of your soul's value. Your worth was complete before anyone noticed you. Next is seek intimacy over applause. Deep, safe relationships feed your soul more than a crowd ever could. Choose spaces where you can be celebrated and fully known. Next is to create for joy, not validation. Pick up the pen, paintbrush, camera, or microphone, not because it will wow anyone, but because it makes you feel alive. Next is to redefine success. Replace "did they notice me" with "did I feel proud of how I showed up?" Next is to embrace ordinariness as freedom. Let yourself be average at some things. It dismantles the fear that you must be exceptional in every room you enter. And finally, honor the inner child on stage and off. Give the younger you permission to step into the spotlight and permission to rest without fear of losing love. You help people remember that their worth isn't in how brightly they perform, but in the fact that they exist at all. You give permission to shine without the burden of perfection. And that's a rare kind of magic. A great affirmation for your Chiron in Leo is, I am enough without the spotlight. My light is my nature, not my performance. Was this a mirror moment for you? Be sure to let me know what came up in the comments. And of course, if this lit you up, hit like, share it with your friends, and subscribe for your next download. And you don't have to figure this out alone. Let's go deeper through my courses, digital journals, audio guidance, or a one-on-one with me. All the links are below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Virgo is the ache of never feeling good enough, always scanning for flaws and carrying the weight of impossible self-expectations until you realize that your humanity was never a flaw to begin with. Chiron in Virgo carries a soul memory of being measured, evaluated, and graded on your worth, as if love, belonging, and safety had to be earned through constant self-correction. At its surface, this wound manifests as the belief that you'll only be respected or valued if you are flawless in your work, your behavior, your health, your appearance, or your service to others. For many, this starts in childhood with subtle or overt messages. You may have been praised most when you achieved, performed, or behaved just right, and quietly overlooked when you didn't. You may have felt responsible for maintaining order, cleaning up emotional messes, keeping the peace, or stepping into adult roles before you were ready, because chaos felt unsafe. You might have been surrounded by criticism disguised as help, where love often came with conditions or helpful advice about what you could do better. The early imprint here is conditional value, the sense that love and acceptance arrive after you've perfected yourself, not before. This fuels a lifelong loop of scanning for what's wrong and fixing it before anyone else can notice, as if your survival depends on staying one step ahead of imperfection. On the surface, this wound can make you appear highly capable, dependable, and disciplined, someone who's always got it together. But underneath, it can create a constant inner tension, where rest feels like a luxury you haven't quite earned, and self-worth feels fragile if your output slips. Beneath the perfectionism lies something even heavier: the quiet shame of feeling fundamentally inadequate. This energy can subtly infiltrate your life in a few different ways. One is self-erasure for approval. You mold yourself into what's needed, even if it costs your authenticity. Emotional underfunctioning in public and overfunctioning in private. So on the outside, you seem capable and together. Behind closed doors, you quietly burn out. Another is relentless mental checklist. Even in moments of rest, you're scanning for what's wrong in your environment, your relationships, or yourself. Hyper-focus on flaws over wholeness. You notice the 2% of imperfection instead of the 98% of beauty. And hiding your struggles. You don't let people see you at your messiest, fearing they'll judge you the way you judge yourself. At its core, this wound can make life feel like one long self-improvement project, where the finish line keeps moving no matter how much you grow. The unspoken fear is that if you stop fixing yourself, you'll be exposed as unworthy. The energy of displacement can show up as resentment masked as service, saying yes to helping because you want to be valued, then feeling unseen when no one acknowledges your sacrifice. Another is invisible exhaustion, carrying the emotional and practical weight for others without ever asking for help in return. Another is a fear of mess, literal and emotional, avoiding vulnerability because it feels too unpredictable, too out of control, as well as body image hypercriticism, viewing your physical self through a microscope as if it must always be perfected. Chiron in Virgo carries the medicine of wholeness without conditions. Your true gift isn't in making things flawless. It's in showing others how to find sacredness in what's already here. You have a natural ability to bring order from chaos, to spot solutions others can't see, and to offer grounded, healing presence. And because you've lived in the pressure cooker of perfectionism, you know the freedom that comes when someone finally says, "You're enough exactly as you are." Your gift is helping people release the shame of imperfection, not because you've mastered flawlessness, but because you've learned how to live authentically alongside your humanity. To rewrite the story of your Chiron and Virgo placement, the first step is to release the flawless or failure myth. Perfection is a moving target. Instead, measure your days by presence, joy, and alignment, not productivity or polish. Next is to choose self-compassion over self-correction. Replace the voice of the inner critic with the voice of the inner caregiver. Next is to redefine usefulness. Your worth is not in how much you produce or fix. It's in the energy you bring to every space you enter. Next is to let people see the mess. Show up before you're ready. It teaches others they don't have to be ready either. Next is to take rest as seriously as work. Rest isn't a reward for finishing your to-do list. It's a requirement for your creativity and clarity. Next is to practice imperfect action. Launch the project, send the email, have the conversation, without waiting for the perfect conditions. And finally, heal through service that feeds you back. Offer your gifts where they feel reciprocal, not draining, so that service becomes joy instead of obligation. You remind people that they are whole long before they are fixed. You give permission to drop the mask of competence and show up as they truly are. Flaws, edges, and all. And still feel loved. A great affirmation for your Chiron in Virgo placement is, I am whole in my humanity. My worth is not in my perfection, but in my presence. Be sure to let me know what part hit home for you in the comments below. And if you love this, be sure to hit like, spread the magic, and subscribe so you never miss a planetary truth bomb. And if this resonated, imagine what we can do in a full session. Links to my digital journals, courses, and one-on-ones are below. I appreciate you. And thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Libra carries the ache of love that always seems just out of reach, or love that comes, but only when you're bending, smoothing, or reshaping yourself to fit someone else's comfort. Early in life, you may have learned that relationships were the stage where your worth was tested. Were you desirable enough? Easy enough to love? Able to keep the peace, even at your own expense? This often starts with subtle conditioning. Growing up around adults who modeled love as performance, polite smiles over tension, agreements made to keep the waters calm. Learning that being liked, chosen, or kept meant avoiding conflict, softening your truth, or becoming exactly who someone needed you to be. As well as experiencing relationships where affection or approval seemed to vanish the moment you expressed a need, took up space, or disrupted the balance. Over time, this creates a deep-seated belief that your value in love hinges on how much harmony you can maintain and how little trouble you cause. You may even feel a quiet pressure to be endlessly appealing, adaptable, and accommodating, afraid that showing your full, unfiltered self might cause the scales to tip and love to disappear. What most people miss is that this isn't just about people-pleasing or being conflict avoidant. Chiron in Libra holds a relational exile, the feeling of being disconnected from your own center because you spent so much time orbiting around others. This can manifest as losing track of your own wants and needs until they feel foreign. Choosing partners or friends based on who you can heal, help, or keep stable, only to quietly resent the invisible weight you're carrying. As well as a constant hyper-awareness of others' moods, tones, and body language, scanning for any sign that you've upset the balance. The deepest ache is the loneliness inside connection. The experience of being physically present with someone, yet feeling emotionally unseen because the you they're with is curated for their comfort. There's grief here, not just for the relationships that failed, but for the self that never got to fully show up in the first place. The pain of Chiron and Libra lingers not just in romantic heartbreak, but in the slow erosion of self-trust. When you've been conditioned to value another person's comfort above your own truth, you start to question your instincts. Was I overreacting? Was I too sensitive? Did I misread the situation? You might notice that even when a relationship ends, the habit of self-editing follows you into the next one. It can bleed into friendships, work relationships, and even creative expression. Sometimes you stay too long in situations that drain you because leaving feels like you're the one breaking the connection, and your Libra wound equates breaking connection with failure. But here's what's rarely talked about: the rage. Beneath the polished exterior, there's often a buried fury at all the times you swallowed your truth. But because Chiron in Libra fears the consequences of letting it out, that rage can turn inward, manifesting as self-criticism, overthinking, or a gnawing sense of inadequacy. The gift of Chiron in Libra is that you hold an extraordinary ability to create connection, see from multiple perspectives, and guide others toward balance. But your healing begins the moment you stop sacrificing your wholeness to keep the peace. To achieve this, your new story becomes knowing, one, that love doesn't require erasure. True partnership means your needs, boundaries, and truth belong in the room as much as anyone else's. Next is knowing that harmony is a co-creation, not a one-person job. You are not responsible for holding the relationship together at your own expense. Next is knowing that your presence is enough. You don't need to beautify yourself emotionally, physically, or spiritually to deserve love. Next is knowing that conflict isn't the end of connection. The right people can hold the tension of difference and still stay close. Next is knowing that self-honoring is the root of relational health. When you stand in your truth, you give others permission to meet you there. Next is knowing that boundaries are love's backbone. When you stop overextending, you make space for people who can meet you halfway. And finally, knowing that your wholeness is the harmony. Real balance comes when both sides of the scale, yours and theirs, have equal weight. On the other side of this wound, you become the kind of person who makes others feel safe to bring their whole selves to the table, not just the curated, palatable version. You model relationships that are both beautiful and honest, proving that love doesn't have to be fragile to be worth keeping. You have a rare ability to navigate difference without diminishing it, to create environments where everyone feels seen and respected. And because you know the cost of self-erasure, you protect authenticity, yours and others, like it's sacred. Your medicine teaches that the most magnetic thing about a relationship isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of two people willing to stay present through it. A great affirmation for your Chiron in Libra is, I honor my truth without apology. I release the need to earn love through harmony, and I trust that the right connections will hold steady when I stand in my wholeness. Be sure to let me know what part hit home for you in the comments below. And of course, give this video some love, share it with your soul tribe, and subscribe for more magic. And let's turn this insight into action. Be sure to grab a digital journal, dive into my courses, audio guidance, or book a one-on-one with me. All my links are below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Scorpio is the lifelong ache of craving deep, all-consuming connection, yet fearing the vulnerability that comes with it, and the liberation that comes when you trust that no loss, betrayal, or ending can strip you of your power. Chiron in Scorpio carries the cellular memory of emotional annihilation. This is not just heartbreak. It's the psychic imprint of having your trust shattered, your innocence stripped, or your emotional world turned upside down in a way that felt irreversible. You learned that intimacy comes at a cost, and the safest option might be to keep your truest self under lock and key. This wound often forms in childhood or adolescence when experiences around trust, safety, and emotional closeness leave deep scars. You may have witnessed betrayal, secrecy, or manipulation that made you equate vulnerability with danger. You may have been the emotional confidant for an adult before you were ready, carrying burdens too heavy for your age. There may have been sudden, life-altering losses, death, divorce, abandonment that taught you nothing lasts. Some may have experienced violation or intrusion, creating a lingering fear of being emotionally or physically overpowered. Because of this, you develop a paradox, a hunger for emotional depth that collides with a survival instinct to maintain control. You long to merge with another soul, yet recoil the moment someone gets close enough to see the rawest parts of you. Beneath the mistrust of others lies an even more private terror that you might not survive another rupture. This is where the wound embeds itself in your nervous system, shaping your patterns without you realizing. This can show up as hypervigilance in love. Even with trustworthy people, your body is scanning for signs of danger or deception. Power as protection is another. Maintaining emotional leverage so no one can leave you powerless. Preemptive sabotage. Pulling away, creating conflict, or testing someone's loyalty to avoid being blindsided. Another is guarding blessings. Holding back joy or celebration because you fear something will take it away. Another is resistance to surrender. Mistaking openness for loss of control, when in reality, it's the gateway to the intimacy you crave. At its root, this isn't just, what if they hurt me? It's, what if I can't rebuild if they do? You may overestimate the destructiveness of loss and underestimate your own capacity to regenerate. Chiron in Scorpio can show itself in a few different ways. One is living in survival mode. Even good love feels draining when you're always braced for impact. Another is emotional numbing, shutting down deep feelings so you won't have to face the risk of devastation, but losing connection to joy in the process. Passion suppression is another. Toning down your emotional or sexual intensity to keep others from having too much power over you, as well as a perpetual strength role, always being the phoenix who rises from ashes without letting others help you rise. Your healing comes when you stop treating intimacy like a battlefield and start trusting your ability to survive any loss. Chiron in Scorpio holds the rare medicine of emotional alchemy, the power to turn endings into beginnings, betrayal into wisdom, grief into depth. When healed, you're not afraid of shadow, your own or anyone else's. You can walk into the emotional underworld with someone and not flinch. You become a safe space for others to release shame and face transformation. And your very presence says, yes, this can hurt, and you will live through it. To rewrite the story of your Chiron and Scorpio placement, the first step is to practice radical truth-telling. Share your inner world without disguising it as strategy. Vulnerability becomes safer when you realize the act of revealing your truth is your power, not a liability. Next is to allow endings to be teachers, not thieves. Instead of framing loss as proof that love is dangerous, begin tracking how each ending shaped your values, sharpened your intuition, and expanded your depth. Next is to rewrite control into co-creation. Instead of gripping tightly to ensure safety, begin seeing intimacy as a shared container where both people contribute to the shape of the connection. Your role isn't to guard the gates, it's to tend the fire together. Next is to uncouple intimacy from annihilation. Learn to let closeness in without preparing for a catastrophe. Remind yourself, the past was not a prophecy, it was a passage. Next is to create micro moments of surrender. Let someone hold your gaze without looking away. Accept help without qualifying it. Share a memory without protecting it with a joke. These small acts rewire your body's memory toward safety. Next is to reframe trust as an act toward yourself. You're not trusting them to never hurt you. You're trusting you to know how to care for yourself if they do. That shift alone dismantles the fear that intimacy equals danger. And finally, make intimacy your rebellion. Choosing openness after betrayal is a defiant reclamation of your story. Each time you let love in, you declare that no past wound has the authority to dictate your future. You are the emotional midwife for transformation. You hold people's hands through the fire, reminding them that they are not burning, they're being forged. You teach that vulnerability is not a gamble, but a reclamation of power, and that love can be entered into without surrendering the soul. A great affirmation for your Chiron and Scorpio is, I am unbreakable in my becoming. Every ending has shaped me. Every loss has refined me, and I am safe to open fully to love and life. Let's make this a chart therapy session and share your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, be sure to hit like, send this to your astrology besties, and subscribe so you never miss your cosmic upgrade. And if you're ready to work your chart on a soul deep level, my digital journals, courses, and private sessions are all waiting for you. The links are below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Sagittarius is the lifelong ache of seeking ultimate meaning, wisdom, or freedom, and the liberation that comes when you trust your own inner authority instead of chasing external answers or validation. Chiron in Sagittarius carries the soul memory of having your beliefs, freedom, or sense of possibility diminished or distorted. On the surface, it can look like the fear of being wrong, fear of limitation, or chronic restlessness. But beneath it is the wound of disconnection from your own truth, a belief that the answers you seek live somewhere out there, in a person, philosophy, or path more enlightened than your own. This wound often begins early. You may have grown up in an environment where beliefs were rigid or dogmatic, making you feel trapped, misunderstood, or alien for questioning them. For some, the opposite occurred. Beliefs were constantly shifting, unstable, or contradictory, leaving you without a stable moral or philosophical anchor. You may have been told your dreams or ideals were unrealistic, naive, or dangerous, making you second-guess your own sense of what's possible. It creates an internal tug-of-war, the longing to roam freely through life's big questions, and the fear that your search will either lead you astray or leave you perpetually lost. Beneath the visible wanderlust or idealism lies something more fragile, the belief that if you can't find the truth, you can't truly belong anywhere. This placement can quietly shape your life in several different ways. One is through spiritual whiplash, jumping from one belief system, mentor, or philosophy to another, hoping each new one will finally feel like home. Another way is over-relying on external authorities, giving your power to teachers, gurus, or institutions because you doubt your own wisdom. Fear of settling is another. Avoiding long-term commitments because you equate stability with losing your freedom. Self-doubt in leadership is another. Holding back your teaching, speaking, or guiding others because you fear you don't know enough yet. Also, overcompensating with knowledge, collecting facts, books, or degrees to prove your credibility instead of trusting lived experience. At its deepest, this wound isn't just about faith in life's meaning. It's about faith in yourself as a worthy interpreter of life's meaning. So you may feel this energy in chronic dissatisfaction. Even beautiful experiences may feel like they're missing something. Also, loneliness in crowds, feeling disconnected from those who don't share your beliefs or values, even when you're socially included. Another is existential burnout, getting so overwhelmed by the search for big answers that you end up disengaging entirely. Also, imposter syndrome in wisdom roles, fearing you're a fraud when others look to you for insight or inspiration. Your healing doesn't come from finding the ultimate answer. It comes from realizing you are allowed to live your truth, even if it evolves. Chiron in Sagittarius carries the medicine of embodied wisdom. Once you stop chasing the perfect philosophy or flawless teacher, you discover that your own lived experiences are sacred scriptures. You stop outsourcing your meaning and start becoming a living example of it. Your gift is guiding others to trust their own compass. You remind people that there's no singular road to wisdom, and that freedom isn't found in running from commitment, but in committing to a life that aligns with your soul. To heal and rewrite the story of your Chiron in Sagittarius, the first step is to anchor in your own knowing. Stop waiting for someone else to validate the truths you already feel in your bones. You've spent lifetimes outsourcing your authority to teachers, traditions, or experts who seemed more certain. Now the work is to trust the quiet clarity inside you, the one that doesn't need a degree, approval, or consensus to be real. Next is to let beliefs evolve without shame. Your truth is not a stone tablet. It's a living conversation between you and life. Every time your understanding shifts, it's not betrayal, it's deepening. Give yourself permission to outgrow the things you once swore by, knowing that every stage of belief was exactly what you needed in that moment. Next is to lead from experience, not perfection. You don't need to have the final answer to speak with authority. Your wisdom is credible because you've lived it, not because it's flawless. Share your insights while they're still in progress. It's often the unfinished story that frees someone else to begin theirs. Next is to redefine freedom. Freedom isn't a life with no boundaries. That's chaos. True freedom is having the sovereignty to choose your own boundaries, to commit to what nourishes you, and to release what doesn't. It's not running from all limits. It's building the ones that protect your wholeness. Next is to stop collecting and start embodying. There's a point where more learning becomes a form of hiding. You don't need another book, another certification, or another mentor to give you permission to live what you already know. Let your body, your voice, and your actions become the proof of your wisdom. And finally, see commitment as liberation. You've been told that committing to one path will lock you in. But when you commit from the truth of who you are, the opposite happens. Your energy stops scattering in 1,000 directions, and you finally have the depth to create something lasting. Commitment becomes a key that unlocks more space, more peace, and more authenticity. You teach that truth is not a final stop. It's a living, breathing relationship with life itself. Your very presence gives people permission to stop fearing that they'll get it wrong and start living in alignment with what's right for them right now. You remind them that the truest wisdom isn't memorized, it's embodied. A great affirmation for your Chiron in Sagittarius is, my truth is enough. My path is sacred because it is mine, and I am free to let it unfold. Was this a mirror moment for you? Be sure to let me know what came up in the comments below. And of course, if this lit you up, hit like, share it with your friends, and subscribe for your next download. And your next breakthrough is just one click away. My digital journals, audio guidance, courses, and private sessions are linked below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Capricorn is the lifelong ache of proving your value through achievement, status, or control, and the liberation that comes when you stop measuring yourself against the world's scoreboard and start living by your own definition of success. Chiron in Capricorn carries the soul memory of being measured before you were nurtured. Your worth may have been tallied in achievements, grades, accolades, or how well you upheld your duties. Even in loving households, you may have absorbed the message that reliability, maturity, and composure were more important than vulnerability or rest. This wound often starts in subtle ways that snowball into a lifelong pattern. You may have been the old soul child, the one praised for acting mature, responsible, and self-sufficient beyond your years. Instead of being comforted when you struggled, you may have been reminded to toughen up or keep it together. Achievements may have been celebrated more than emotions, making it feel safer to lead with accomplishments rather than openness. You may have learned early that the way to gain respect was to be useful, and so you built your life around proving your usefulness. Over time, you internalized a silent agreement. If I'm not producing, I'm not worthy. It's not just about career. It seeps into relationships, self-care, and even creativity, leaving you feeling uneasy whenever you're not actively earning your place. Beneath the surface drive to achieve lies something more fragile, a deep-seated fear that if you're not impressive, you'll be irrelevant. This energy can quietly shape your life. One way is self-imposed ceilings. You push yourself hard, but avoid truly daring moves in case failure would shatter your identity. Another way this shows up is through quiet grief. Mourning a childhood that was more about responsibility than exploration, but never feeling allowed to speak that loss aloud. Authority wounds is another. Feeling a mix of resentment and longing toward authority figures, wanting their approval while mistrusting their power. Chronic self-auditing is another. Mentally checking if you've done enough today to justify rest or joy, as well as control as safety. Over-planning, overworking, or micromanaging to avoid the discomfort of uncertainty. At its deepest, this wound isn't just about career or recognition. It's about an identity built on function over feeling. Without achievements or order to point to, you may feel untethered, questioning who you are beneath the structure you've built. This can bring different types of energy into your life. One of success that tastes like dust. Reaching milestones yet feeling nothing because the journey was fueled by proving rather than passion. Loneliness in leadership is another aspect. Holding yourself apart emotionally because you fear vulnerability will make people lose respect for you. This can also show up as invisible exhaustion, functioning at high capacity for so long that burnout feels like your baseline, as well as deflecting tenderness, feeling uncomfortable when someone sees you as more than your accomplishments because you're not sure how to receive that kind of love. Your healing doesn't come from the perfect resume or the ideal life path. It comes from realizing that your worth is inherent, unshakable, and present even in stillness. Chiron in Capricorn holds the medicine of self-defined success. Once you loosen your grip on external validation, you discover a more sustainable rhythm, one where ambition coexists with ease, where leadership is grounded in humanity rather than perfection. Your gift is showing others that it's possible to be deeply committed to your goals without being enslaved by them. You model integrity over image and purpose over pressure. To rewrite the story of your Chiron and Capricorn energy, the first step is to detach worth from output. Ask yourself daily, if I did nothing today, would I still be valuable? The answer must become yes. Next is to redefine success from the inside out. Replace checklist with questions like, does this make me proud? Or, does this feel aligned? Next is to learn to receive without earning. Let love, help, and kindness land without rushing to pay it back or prove that you deserve it. Next is to embrace rest as strategy. Treat recovery, reflection, and play as essential components of long-term achievement, not as indulgences. Next is to show up imperfectly. Share your work, ideas, and leadership, even when you feel unpolished. It humanizes you and builds trust. Next is to heal the child who had to carry too much. Give yourself moments of pure joy and irresponsibility, and remind yourself that life isn't only about carrying the weight. And finally, practice visible vulnerability. Let trusted people see you in your uncertainty and messiness, so your relationships aren't built solely on your strength. You help people dismantle the belief that their worth is tied to their productivity. Through your example, you teach that real authority comes from authenticity, not from flawless execution. You remind others that leadership and softness can and should coexist. A great affirmation for your Chiron in Capricorn energy is, I am valuable because I exist, not because I achieve. I lead from my truth, not from my fear of being unseen. Okay, your turn. Be sure to chat with me in the comments and let me know what resonated with you. And of course, your 3-second ritual: like, share, and subscribe to keep this energy coming your way. And this is just the surface. Let's go all the way in. Details for my digital journals, courses, and one-on-one sessions are linked below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Aquarius is the lifelong ache of feeling like an outsider in every room, searching for a place where you fully fit, and the liberation that comes when you stop molding yourself to belong and start owning the brilliance of your difference. Chiron in Aquarius carries the soul memory of being in the group, but not of the group. Even in loving environments, you may have felt just far enough outside the center to question whether you were truly accepted. At the surface, this can look like a struggle with belonging, but at its core, it's a wound around identity and authenticity. Do I have to hide parts of myself to be accepted? This wound often begins early. You may have been the child who thought differently than your peers, which drew curiosity at best and ridicule at worst. Your opinions, quirks, or creative ideas may have been dismissed as weird or too much. Sometimes you were included socially, but only as a novelty, the different one, the one to joke about, or the one who served a role without truly being known. In other cases, you learn to edit yourself to fit the room, becoming a chameleon to avoid rejection. Over time, you may have developed a quiet belief that true belonging is impossible. So you either work tirelessly to fit in or stand apart on purpose, telling yourself you don't need connection. Beneath the obvious longing for a community lies a more tender truth: the fear that the real you will always be too different to be loved in full. So this energy can quietly shape your life in a few different ways. One is chameleon fatigue, changing your energy, appearance, or language depending on the people around you, then feeling drained because you can't keep track of who you really are. Another is preemptive self-exile, pulling away from groups before they can exclude you, telling yourself you're above it while secretly aching for connection. Another is innovator's loneliness, having visions, ideas, or values that are ahead of their time and feeling isolated because others don't yet understand them. Hyper-independence is another, convincing yourself you don't need anyone, masking a deep fear of vulnerability. And this can lead into distrust of groups, seeing collectives as inherently fickle, untrustworthy, or stifling, even when they're supportive. At its deepest, this wound is about relational safety. It's not simply the fear of rejection. It's the fear that connection will require the slow erasure of your authentic self. So you may feel this energy in a few different ways. One is hidden grief for your people, mourning the tribe you've never quite found, even if you pretend not to care. Also, overcompensating with intellect, offering your ideas and skills instead of your vulnerability, because they feel safer to share. Another way is through chronic outsider lens. Even in loving connections, you're scanning for proof that you're still on the fringe. As well as in all or nothing friendships, either blending in so much you lose yourself or keeping such firm boundaries that no one gets close. Your healing doesn't come from finally finding the perfect group. It comes from becoming a safe place for your own difference first. Chiron in Aquarius holds the medicine of authentic inclusion. Once you accept the fullness of who you are, you naturally attract relationships and communities where you don't have to shrink or edit yourself. You become magnetic not because you match everyone else, but because you radiate unapologetic individuality. Your gift is the ability to connect with all kinds of people without losing your core. You're a bridge between worlds, the visionary who can hold space for difference without needing uniformity. To rewrite the story of your Chiron and Aquarius energy, the first step is to stop trading authenticity for acceptance. Every time you edit your truth to fit in, you chip away at the very self you fought to protect. If staying means shrinking, it's not your place, no matter how much history, loyalty, or comfort it holds. The right spaces will never require you to dim your light to remain. Next is to seek resonance, not uniformity. True belonging doesn't mean everyone thinks, believes, or lives the same way. It's finding the spaces where your uniqueness doesn't just pass, but adds to the whole, where differences are met with curiosity, not quiet disapproval. Next is to create the space you crave. If you couldn't find a community where you felt seen, you're here to build it. Whether it's through friendships, creative projects, or entire platforms, you can create sanctuaries for the unconventional. Places where people breathe easier because they don't have to explain themselves first. Next is to let yourself be known. Share the stories you've buried, the quirks you've hidden, the truths you've filtered for fear of side eyes or whispers. Every time you reveal another layer, you teach others that the cost of hiding is always greater than the risk of being seen. Next is to detach from the role of the exception. You don't need to prove your worth by always standing apart. Sometimes your value isn't in being the lone voice. It's in letting yourself be part of something without sacrificing your essence. You're not powerful because you're different. You're powerful because you're you. Next is to heal the part that mistrusts closeness. Let people show you they can handle the unedited version of you without flinching. Yes, it may feel risky, but every time someone meets you with acceptance instead of rejection, You rewire the part of you that learned connection was conditional. And finally, anchor your identity internally. Know yourself so deeply that no group's applause can inflate you and no rejection can erase you. The more rooted you are in your own knowing, the freer you are to engage with others from choice, not from fear of losing your place. You show people that belonging isn't about sameness, it's about safety. Your presence dissolves the fear of being too much or too different. And in your orbit, people realize they don't have to trade their truth for connection. You help them see that the most magnetic relationships are built not on blending in, but on standing out together. A great affirmation for your Chiron and Aquarius energy is, I am at home in my own difference. The right people don't just accept me, they celebrate me. Okay, it's chart confession time. Be sure to let me know what resonated most for you in the comments. And if your chart's nodding along, be sure to hit like, share the love, and subscribe so we can do this again. You don't have to figure this out alone. Let's go deeper through my courses, digital journals, audio guidance, or a one-on-one with me. All the links are below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Chiron in Pisces is the lifelong ache of feeling like you must merge, rescue, or sacrifice to keep love, and the liberation that comes when you learn that you are worthy of unconditional connection without disappearing into it. Chiron in Pisces carries the imprint of a wound that isn't always visible to the outside world, because it's one that erodes from within. It's the wound of being too permeable in a world that doesn't always respect softness, compassion, or empathy. It can feel like you came into this lifetime without the natural armor that most people have, leaving you open to absorbing the pain, projections, and needs of others before you even register your own. This often begins in childhood. You may have grown up in an emotionally unpredictable or spiritually disconnected environment where you learned early on to read the room, anticipate others' moods, and adjust yourself accordingly, just to keep the peace. There may have been a subtle or overt sense that your emotions weren't entirely your own, that you were responsible for soothing, uplifting, or carrying others' burdens. In some cases, a caretaker or environment may have mirrored love as something tied to sacrifice. You learned that you were good when you give, forgive, or put yourself last. Even if you had loving support, you may have felt unseen on a soul level, like people loved parts of you, but never fully grasped the whole truth of who you are. At its surface, this wound can look like sensitivity, empathy, and selflessness, traits the world often praises. But beneath it is a deep ache, the belief that love requires self-erasure. And over time, that erasure becomes so second nature that you stop noticing when you're doing it. While many will tell you Chiron in Pisces is about compassion and boundaries, the deeper reality is more raw. It's about existential belonging. This placement often carries an unspoken terror of separateness, a fear that if you hold your own shape too firmly, you'll be abandoned or left adrift. This can manifest in hidden ways. One being the emotional chameleon. You unconsciously take on the emotional language, preferences, or even values of those around you, not to manipulate, but to belong. Another is loving at your own expense. You may notice a pattern of relationships where you become the healer, anchor, or muse, only to realize you lost your own center. Avoiding conflict at all costs is another. You might downplay your feelings, soften your boundaries, or say, "It's fine," when it isn't, because the risk of confrontation feels like the risk of losing connection entirely. This can also show up as spiritual self-betrayal. You may bypass your own pain under the guise of compassion, telling yourself you understand why they hurt you, while leaving your own wounds unacknowledged. This can lead to an erosion of identity. Over years, the merging and softening to others' needs leaves you wondering, who am I, when no one else is around to reflect me back? The truest wound here is not just about empathy gone unchecked. It's about the loss of your own spiritual and emotional sovereignty. This can show up as guilt for having needs, feeling selfish or mean for asking for reciprocity or space, chronic depletion, carrying emotional burdens so consistently that fatigue feels like a permanent part of your identity. Over-forgiveness, allowing repeated harm because the idea of walking away feels like abandoning someone in their pain. Dream world escape is another. Leaning on fantasy, spirituality, or altered states as a refuge from the harshness of reality. The healing comes when you realize that compassion without boundaries isn't compassion. It's self-neglect in disguise. Once healed, you develop a rare and powerful kind of love, one that holds deep space for others while remaining deeply anchored in yourself. Your greatest gift is your ability to see and honor the wholeness in people without stepping in to complete them. You become a mirror that reflects back their own light, not because you dimmed yours to fit theirs, but because you kept yours burning. To rewrite the story of your Chiron and Pisces energy, the first step is to anchor into self-awareness first. Before engaging deeply with others, pause to identify what's yours and what's theirs. This one act will shift the entire pattern. Next is to redefine love as mutual exchange. Let love be a space where both people are nourished, not a one-way current flowing out of you. Next is to let others have their path. It's not your role to save or protect people from their own lessons. That's their sacred ground to walk. Next is to normalize saying no. Understand that no can be an act of love, protecting both your energy and the integrity of the relationship. Next is to rebuild a sovereign identity Make time for solo pursuits that are 100% yours, not tied to anyone else's influence or approval. Next is to practice embodied compassion. Give from fullness, not from the scraps left over after everyone else has been fed. And finally, honor your own wounds. Acknowledge your own pain without minimizing it in the name of empathy. When you do this, you stop equating love with depletion and instead live as proof that the deepest compassion comes from a place of wholeness. You show people that it's possible to love with full heart and open hands, without losing yourself in the process. Your energy reassures others that they are already whole and that true connection is built when both souls remain intact. A great affirmation for your Chiron and Pisces energy is, my love is strongest when I am whole. I can hold compassion without losing myself. Let's make this a chart therapy session and share your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, tap that like button, share the vibes, and subscribe so the stars always find you. And if this resonated, imagine what we can do in a full session. Links to my digital journals, courses, audio guidance, and one-on-one sessions are below. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching.